The heavy, faded black duffel bag hit me squarely in the chest. The force of it knocked the breath out of my 70-year-old lungs, and I stumbled backward, my boots slipping on the polished hardwood floor. I looked up, trying to process the hatred burning in my own daughter's eyes. Rachel stood there, her face flushed with anger, pointing a trembling finger toward the heavy oak front door. "I'm not joking, Dad. Get out. Derek is bringing a very important client to view the house in 20 minutes, and we cannot have you loitering around the living room looking like a homeless person." I stood frozen in the foyer, the heavy bag slumping to the floor by my feet. Behind Rachel, lounging against the kitchen island with a smug grin on his face, was my son-in-law, Derek. He adjusted his expensive silk tie and let out a cruel little laugh. "You heard her, Harrison," Derek sneered, taking a sip of his coffee. "This is a $1 million listing. These buyers are looking for luxury. They are not looking for the lingering scent of old man and cheap medicine. So, do us all a favor. Grab your garbage and take a long walk. Don't come back until the showing is over. Actually, maybe don't come back at all." I looked from Derek to Rachel, desperately searching for a trace of the little girl I had raised, the little girl who used to hold my hand tightly when we walked through the park. But there was nothing, only a cold, impatient glare. "Rachel," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "it's freezing outside. The snow is coming down hard, and the wind chill is below zero. You want me to walk the streets in this weather?" "Oh, stop being so dramatic," she snapped, crossing her arms. "There's a coffee shop 3 blocks down. Buy a cheap tea and sit there. Just be out of my sight. We have a lot riding on this sale, and you are ruining the aesthetic of our home." Our home. The words echoed in my mind, twisting like a rusty knife in my gut. She called it her home. She called it their sale. But the brutal reality was something far different. As I looked around the magnificent living room with its vaulted ceilings, the custom stone fireplace, and the massive windows looking out over the mountains, my chest tightened with a grief that had nothing to do with the cold weather outside. 3 years ago, I sold everything I had. My beloved wife, Diane, had passed away after a long and agonizing battle with illness. It was a dark time that nearly broke me. The only thing she left behind was a substantial life insurance policy, money she specifically meant for my retirement. Diane had held my hand on her deathbed and told me she wanted me to be comfortable, to rest after 40 years of working tirelessly to provide for our family. She wanted me to travel, to read my books, and to finally have peace. But when Rachel and Derek came to me shortly after the funeral, crying about their massive debts, their failing business ventures, and begging for a fresh start, I did what any loving, foolish father would do. I sacrificed my own comfort. I took Diane's life insurance money, every single penny of the legacy she left me, and I bought this beautiful house in the upscale Denver suburbs. I paid in full, but because I wanted to help Rachel build her credit score, and because I trusted my own flesh and blood implicitly, I put the deed entirely in her name. I handed them the keys to a debt-free mansion with the sole promise that I would have a small, warm room down the hall and a loving family to spend my final years with. Now, that same daughter was throwing a bag of my meager belongings at me, treating me like a stray dog that had wandered into her spotless kingdom. She was selling the house right out from under me, planning to take the money and leave me with nothing. "Did you not hear her, chop chop?" Derek barked, stepping forward and clapping his hands loudly, treating me like a disobedient child. "Move it, old man. The clients will be here any minute, and I need this place sanitized." I slowly bent down, my arthritic knees popping in the quiet room. I grabbed the handles of the black duffel bag. It felt unusually heavy, but my mind was too clouded with shock and heartbreak to register the weight. I pulled myself up, looking Rachel directly in the eyes one last time. I wanted her to see the tears welling in my eyes. I wanted her to feel a shred of guilt. She simply turned her back to me and began fluffing the pillows on the expensive leather sofa I had bought for them. "Fine," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "I'm leaving." I opened the heavy front door, and a blast of icy Colorado wind hit my face, stinging my cheeks like 1,000 tiny needles. The snow was falling thick and fast, blanketing the driveway in pure white. I stepped out onto the porch. Before I could even turn around to say a final goodbye, Derek slammed the door shut behind me. The loud click of the deadbolt locking echoed through the freezing air. I stood alone on the porch, shivering in my thin sweater, clutching the black duffel bag to my chest. The temperature was dropping rapidly, and the sky above Denver was a bleak, unforgiving gray. I had no car. I had nowhere to go. My own daughter had just evicted me from the house I bought for her, simply because my presence was an inconvenience to her husband's real estate deal. I began to walk down the snow-covered driveway, my boots crunching softly in the silence of the neighborhood. The cold was piercing through my clothes, chilling me to the bone. I realized I needed my thick winter coat. I remembered packing it inside the black duffel bag a few weeks ago, when the weather first started to turn. I reached the bus stop at the corner of the street. The wind was howling now. I set the heavy bag down on the icy wooden bench, my fingers numb and trembling as I reached for the zipper. I just wanted my coat. I just wanted a little bit of warmth to survive the afternoon. But as I pulled the zipper open, my heart stopped. The world around me seemed to fall completely silent. Inside the worn black fabric, there was no familiar green wool. There was no heavy collar to protect my neck from the biting Colorado wind. Instead, the bag was stuffed to the brim with neatly organized, thick paper stacks. My numb fingers fumbled as I reached inside, my mind struggling to process what my eyes were seeing. The wind whipped around the bus stop, blowing a fine mist of snow into the open bag, but I barely felt the cold anymore. A sudden burning heat rose in my chest. I pulled out one of the stacks. It was bound tightly with a crisp white paper band from a major national bank. I flipped it over. They were cashier's checks, dozens of them. I wiped a snowflake from my eyelashes and squinted at the amounts printed on the stiff paper. It was $50,000. I pulled out another check from the bag. Another $50,000. And another, and another. My hands were shaking uncontrollably now, not from the cold, but from a surge of adrenaline and disbelief. I counted them quickly, frantically, my breath catching in my throat. There were 14 checks in total, each for $50,000. That was $700,000 in cashier's checks, all made out to cash. My mind raced. This was not my money. This was far more than I had ever given Rachel. This was more than the house was even worth. This was Derek's money. This was the money from his clients. This was the money from his real estate deals. But why would he put it in my bag? Why would he give it to me? Then, my fingers brushed against something else at the bottom of the bag. A small, folded piece of paper. It was a note. My heart pounded as I unfolded it, my eyes scanning the hurried, almost frantic handwriting. It was from Rachel. "Dad," the note began. "I am so sorry. I know this is not enough, but it's all I could get. Derek is a monster. He's involved in something terrible, something illegal. He's been taking out massive loans from dangerous people, using the house as collateral. He forged my signature on the papers. He's planning to disappear with this money and leave me to face the consequences. I couldn't let him do that to you, not after everything. This money is from the sale of the house. He was going to use it to pay off his debts and vanish. Take it. Use it to protect yourself. I've also included a flash drive with all of his financial records, his illegal dealings, everything. It's encrypted, but I know you'll figure it out. Please, Dad, be careful. He's dangerous. I love you." The note ended abruptly, almost as if she had been interrupted. My vision blurred. Rachel, my daughter. She had done this. She had put the money in my bag. She had given me the evidence. She had risked everything to save me, even as she was throwing me out into the snow. The conflicting emotions were overwhelming. Anger, betrayal, confusion, but also a flicker of hope. My daughter, the one I thought had abandoned me, had shown a glimmer of the person I once knew. I clutched the note and the checks to my chest. The cold no longer mattered. A new kind of fire was burning inside me. A fire of determination. Derek thought he could use me, discard me, and walk away clean. He thought he could steal my legacy, betray my trust, and leave me for dead. He was wrong. He had just handed me the weapon I needed to destroy him. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I pulled out my old, battered flip phone and dialed the only number I could think of. Jonathan Hayes. He was a brilliant, albeit eccentric, corporate lawyer I had worked with briefly during my hedge fund days. He specialized in complex financial litigation and had a reputation for being ruthless and utterly discreet. "Jonathan," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in my hands. "It's Harrison Vance. I need your help. I have a situation, a very complicated one. I need you to meet me, immediately." Jonathan, ever the professional, didn't ask questions. He simply gave me the address of his private office in downtown Denver. It was a nondescript building, far from the gleaming towers of corporate finance, but I knew it was where he conducted his most sensitive business. The taxi ride felt like an eternity. I kept the duffel bag on my lap, my hand never leaving it. When I finally arrived at Jonathan's office, he greeted me with a solemn nod. He was a man of few words, but his eyes held a sharp, intelligent glint. I laid out the entire story, from Diane's passing to Rachel's betrayal, to the shocking contents of the duffel bag. I handed him Rachel's note and the flash drive. He listened intently, his expression unreadable, occasionally scribbling notes on a legal pad. When I finished, the silence in the room was heavy. "This is quite the predicament, Harrison," Jonathan said, finally breaking the silence. "Your son-in-law is a fool, and your daughter, though misguided, has given you a powerful hand. The cashier's checks are evidence of fraud and potentially money laundering. The flash drive, if it contains what she claims, could be the key to unraveling his entire criminal enterprise." He picked up the flash drive, examining it closely. "This encryption is sophisticated, but not unbreakable. Give me a few hours. My team can crack this. In the meantime, we need to address the immediate threat: Derek's illegal loans. You mentioned he used the house as collateral. Do you have any details about these lenders?" I remembered a few cryptic phrases from Rachel's note and some hushed phone calls I had overheard. She mentioned shadow syndicates and loan sharks. He was desperate. He was talking about a $500,000 loan. Jonathan's eyes narrowed. Shadow syndicates. That complicates things. These aren't your typical banks. They operate outside the law, and they don't play by the rules. They'll come for their money, and they won't care who gets hurt in the process. Derek is in deep trouble, and by extension, so is Rachel, since the house is in her name. But the house is my house, Jonathan, I insisted, my voice rising. I paid for it. I just put the deed in her name. Legally, it's hers, Harrison, he said gently. And if Derek defaulted on these loans, those syndicates would come after the house. They'd foreclose, and Rachel would lose everything. And you, as an occupant, would be out on the street, just as she intended. A cold dread washed over me. I had been so focused on revenge, I hadn't considered the immediate danger. So what do we do? Jonathan leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. We buy the paper. These shadow syndicates operate on a very simple premise. They want a massive return on their investment, but above all, they want liquidity. They don't want to go through a drawn-out foreclosure process on a suburban home, dealing with real estate agents and messy legal evictions. If someone offers them the principal amount plus a guaranteed immediate premium in clean, untraceable cash, they will sell that debt in a heartbeat. They will wash their hands of Derek entirely. Jonathan nodded slowly, a fierce grin spreading across his face. We can do it, he said, pulling his keyboard closer. We need to set up a holding company right now, a ghost entity, something with layers of corporate anonymity, so Derek never sees your name on the paperwork until it's far too late. We'll call it Apex Financial. I have a few shell corporations already registered in Delaware, just sitting on the shelf for emergencies like this. We can transfer ownership and activate the LLC within the hour. It will be completely untraceable. Anyone searching public records will only find a registered agent in a generic office building. They will never connect Apex back to you. But Harrison, there's a major problem here. Buying a $500,000 loan requires $500,000 in actual liquid cash. We cannot use the stolen cashier's checks from your bag. That money is evidence. It belongs to Derek's victims. It has to be returned to them untouched. How are you going to fund this buyout? I smiled a quiet, knowing smile. Rachel and Derek always assumed they knew everything about my finances. They knew about Diane's life insurance, and they knew about my standard corporate pension. When I gave them the money for the house, Rachel assumed I had completely emptied my reserves. She thought I was a dependent living on a fixed income, entirely at her mercy. That was why she was so eager to declare me mentally incompetent to seize whatever scraps were left. But you don't spend 40 years as a senior auditor for a major hedge fund without learning how to aggressively multiply your own capital. I had spent decades building a private, highly diversified investment portfolio. It was buried in offshore trusts and index funds that Rachel knew absolutely nothing about. I had always planned to leave this portfolio to Rachel in my will, hoping she would mature over time. But her actions yesterday completely erased that desire. She threw my love away for the illusion of control and wealth. I didn't hide it from her out of malice. I hid it because I knew her pragmatic, greedy nature, and I wanted to ensure I was never treated like a walking ATM. Well, she treated me like garbage anyway. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a small, encrypted mobile banking device. "I have the funds, Jonathan," I said smoothly. "Clean, untraceable, and ready to be wired instantly. Set up Apex Financial." Jonathan didn't ask any more questions. His fingers flew across the keyboard. Within 45 minutes, Apex Financial was a fully registered, legally binding entity, operating out of a virtual office in Wilmington, Delaware. Jonathan then picked up his secure landline. He used the contact information listed on the forged loan document I had decrypted from Derek's hard drive. The negotiation was remarkably brief. Shadow lenders do not waste time with pleasantries. Jonathan introduced himself as a corporate acquisition attorney representing a private equity firm interested in distressed debt. He offered them the full $500,000 principal plus a 20% premium for their trouble, payable immediately via wire transfer. Just as I predicted, the syndicate representative accepted the offer without a second of hesitation. They were thrilled to offload a messy suburban real estate collateral for instant, clean cash. I typed a series of complex authorization codes into my banking device. I watched the screen as $600,000 vanished from my private offshore account and dropped straight into the escrow account Jonathan had just opened for Apex Financial. 10 minutes later, the secure fax machine in the corner of Jonathan's office hummed to life. A thick stack of documents began to spill out into the plastic tray. It was the deed of assignment. Jonathan gathered the pages quickly, reviewing the legal jargon to ensure everything was ironclad. He placed the final page on the desk in front of me and handed me his heavy silver pen. "Sign here, acting as the managing director of Apex Financial," he instructed. I took the pen. My hand did not shake. I signed my name with a smooth, deliberate stroke. The ink dried, sealing the trap completely. It was done. I set the pen down on the desk. I was now officially, legally, and undeniably Derek's sole creditor. I owned the $500,000 debt. More importantly, I held the absolute first position lien on the house. Derek could not sell that property. He could not transfer the title. He could not access a single penny of equity without my explicit written permission. He was currently running around Denver, sweating through his suit, frantically trying to close a real estate deal to pay off a syndicate of dangerous criminals. He had absolutely no idea that the criminals were already gone. He had no idea that the ruthless entity holding his financial life by the throat was the very same frail old man he had kicked out into the snow just a few hours ago. The house of cards he had built was no longer swaying in the wind. It was already crushed, and I was simply waiting for the perfect moment to show him the absolute devastation he had brought upon his own head. His arrogance blinded him, but soon he would learn the true cost of underestimating a patient father who had nothing left to lose. I left Jonathan's office with a sense of calm satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. The immediate threat was neutralized, and the trap was set. Now, it was time to play the long game. The next morning, I returned to the bus stop where Rachel had left me. The snow had been cleared, but the memory of that moment was fresh in my mind. I called the police from a burner phone Jonathan had provided and anonymously reported a large sum of potentially stolen cash found in a duffel bag at the bus stop. I gave a vague description of the bag, knowing they would find the cashier's checks and the flash drive. The police investigation would tie the money directly to Derek's fraudulent activities, and the flash drive would provide the undeniable evidence needed to prosecute him. Within days, the news broke. Derek Sterling, a prominent real estate agent, was arrested for multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. The story dominated local headlines, painting a picture of a man who had defrauded innocent buyers and taken out illegal loans from dangerous syndicates. His assets were frozen, his reputation shattered, and his lavish lifestyle came crashing down. Rachel, however, was a different story. The police investigation revealed her note and the flash drive, confirming her role as an informant. She was granted immunity in exchange for her cooperation and testimony against Derek. She was a victim too, manipulated and coerced by her husband, but the house, the beautiful mansion I had bought for her, was still legally hers, and that's where Apex Financial came in. Jonathan, acting as the managing director of Apex Financial, formally initiated foreclosure proceedings on the property. Rachel was served with the papers, a cold, legal document that stripped her of the one thing she thought she had secured. She tried to fight it, of course, hiring a series of expensive lawyers, but Apex Financial's claim was ironclad. The deed of assignment, my signature, the legal transfer of debt, it was all perfectly executed. There was no loophole, no escape. Derek's trial was a circus. The evidence from the flash drive, coupled with Rachel's tearful testimony, painted a damning picture. He was convicted on all counts and sentenced to a lengthy prison term. His assets had been completely seized, leaving him entirely at the mercy of an overworked public defender. Rachel did not fare much better. When Apex Financial formally foreclosed on the million-dollar property, she was legally evicted. She had no savings, no assets, and no professional income to fall back on. To make matters substantially worse, the innocent homebuyers that Derek had defrauded filed massive civil lawsuits against her, arguing she was a willing beneficiary of his criminal enterprise. Her bank accounts were completely frozen pending the investigation. Her pristine credit score was obliterated. The arrogant woman who sipped expensive wine was now entirely homeless, forced to live out of her compact sedan in the dark corners of public parking lots. I knew all of this because my lawyer kept me thoroughly updated on the legal proceedings, but I had not actually seen my daughter since the night she attacked her husband. That streak ended on a brisk Tuesday morning. I walked out of the gleaming glass lobby of my building, intending to take a quiet stroll to my favorite local coffee shop. As I stepped onto the pristine sidewalk, a figure emerged from the shadows near the parking garage entrance. It was Rachel. The transformation was shocking. Her hair was tangled and unwashed. Her clothes were heavily wrinkled and stained. She looked exhausted, shivering in a thin jacket that was not nearly warm enough for the morning chill. The moment she saw me, her eyes filled with desperate, frantic tears. She rushed forward, closing the distance between us, before the building security guard could even react. "Dad," she sobbed, her voice a hollow, broken rasp. "Dad, please wait. Please talk to me." I stopped walking, but I did not reach out to comfort her. I stood perfectly still, looking at her with the same clinical detachment I used to examine fraudulent spreadsheets. She completely collapsed onto the cold concrete pavement, falling to her knees right in front of me. She reached out with trembling hands, clutching the fabric of my tailored trousers. "I'm so sorry," she wept, her tears leaving wet tracks down her dirty cheeks. "I was so wrong about everything. Derek manipulated me. He lied to me. I had no idea he was stealing money or taking out illegal loans. I have lost absolutely everything. Dad, I'm sleeping in my car. I have nothing to eat. Please, you have to help me. You are my father. You are my only family left. Please, give me a second chance. I will do anything. I will take care of you. Just please, don't leave me like this." I looked down at the weeping woman kneeling at my feet. A few years ago, the sight of my daughter crying would have shattered my heart into a million pieces. I would have moved heaven and earth to fix her problems. But the man who loved her died the exact moment she threw a black duffel bag at his chest and told him to walk out into a freezing blizzard. I gently but firmly pulled my leg back, forcing her to release her desperate grip on my trousers. I looked down at her with absolute cold clarity. "You did not care about family when you tried to lock me in an asylum to steal my pension," I said. my voice steady and completely devoid of emotion. You did not care about family when you threw me out of the house I bought for you, simply because my presence was an inconvenience to your greed. You made your choice, Rachel. You threw me out like trash. Now you can enjoy your own garbage. I turned my back on her and walked away. I did not look over my shoulder. I ignored the agonizing screams and the desperate pleading down the sidewalk behind me. I chose my own dignity, my peace, and my self-respect over the toxic, poisonous bonds of blood. Later that evening, I stood on the expansive balcony of my condominium, the city lights of Denver glittering brightly below me. I held a heavy crystal glass filled with expensive, aged bourbon. The legal sale of the foreclosed house had been finalized earlier that week. After Jonathan took his fees, a massive sum remained. I did not keep a single penny. I transferred the entire balance to a charity dedicated to providing free legal aid to elderly individuals who suffered financial abuse by their family members. I took a slow sip of the warm bourbon. Society conditions us to believe family is everything, but blood is not a binding contract for abuse. Respect is earned, not owed. I learned you are never too old to fight back and build a sanctuary out of betrayal. Thank you for listening. If it helped you find courage, subscribe and comment where you are watching from. Stay strong, protect your heart, and I will see you next time, with love and respect.